Hey guys, Mutantcowboy here. In this Division 2 Warlords of New York build video, I'm going to be showing you my DPS shield build that I've finally managed to mostly put together. Now I say mostly because it is a pain in the butt, and I'll get into more detail on that when I actually start showing you the build. But I haven't actually been that active in PvP since the update, and I figured this would be a great time to start actually diving back into it. So I ended up jumping into skirmish to try out this build. I wasn't sure what the metas were, currently, and I haven't been, paying attention to PvP all that much. So I wasn't sure how this build would actually perform. Now, even with all the incredible rifle meta stuff that was going on at the time, it is still a really good build, and it is still very effective. Now, I have had to sacrifice my shield health a little bit more than I would like, so I am looking for a way to kind of counter that a little bit with the build, and that'll probably involve me removing or changing around some pieces. But for right now, this build is pretty fun to use. Alright, so obviously nothing too impressive with the weapon category. I'm using my AKM with, Optimist, which is pretty much one of my standard go-to assault rifles. I am using the Baker's Dozen. Obviously, it's got that perfect lucky shot, which is great for PVE, especially when you're in cover. The rolls aren't terrible, and I never really bothered to re-roll it or anything, but it's still a good gun in PvP. For my primary weapon actually on this build is my Mozambique Special. Now it's got the perfect breadbasket, which basically, I land 2 body shots and then my next headshot is 100% headshot damage. So it is a huge amount of damage to deal in PvP, especially if you can consistently hit it. Now my first armor piece is actually my Coyote mask, and I did actually get one with really good rolls on it. And that, you can see 15% weapon damage. It's got almost max crit chance and crit damage, and then I've got an almost max crit damage mod on there. And if you don't know, Packed Instincts is a really good talent to have, especially with the shield build, because, with the short range of the pistols and you can't use the holster anymore for added range, you're most likely going to be the most effective in that 0 to 5 meter range. So 25% crit hit damage on all your shots is an incredibly beneficial thing on a mask, especially considering the most you'd probably get from a brand set is 15. So, it's definitely top tier in the mask department on this build. All right, next we're going to take a look at my Providence Defense backpack. Now this one is where the grind starts to get a little bit rough. I had to get, crit chance, crit damage on there and really, at least acceptable rolls so I could get my skill tier rolled onto the core attribute. This is just so I could get more health on my actual shield. Now, the one thing that I would actually like to have a little bit better is just getting rid of that safeguard talent. It is good, it is beneficial because it does increase my Artificer Hive's healing, but if you're using it in PvP, well, it's really rare that you're just not going to take any damage from somebody on the side or something, so it does have a limited use in PvP. In PvE, it is definitely one of the go-to stats that I would use. And why I say it's better in PvE is just because you can judge the damage on your shield a lot better in PvE content. You don't get that huge, insane burst damage that's just going to knock down your shield in like a half a second. Alright, for my chest piece, I am using another Providence Defense, and that's got a, perfect roll and weapon damage. It's also got headshot damage, crit chance, and a crit damage mod. And it comes with Gunslinger. Again, this isn't the optimal talent that I would want, but whenever I do pull out my shield and if I am on another weapon, it does count as swapping to this weapon. So I do get 20% total weapon damage for 5 seconds, and then of course I can just, get that anytime I switch weapons, so if I'm switching from a AR to my marksman rifle or my regular rifle, then I get that bonus. For my gloves, I am using Douglas and Harding for that 20% pistol damage. And again, this one I did have to roll in skill tier, so I do have a little bit lower crit damage, crit chance rolls, but I think it's worth it for that skill tier. My third piece of Providence Defense is on the holster, a weak weapon damage roll. I probably should have ignored that. I probably shouldn't have ignored it and probably should have, ignored the crit chance, but that's what I did anyway. Hopefully I can get a better one in the future. Alright, and for my knee pads, I am using the Cheska Varoba, which gives me that crit hit chance, which is 10%. It's got the 12% weapon damage. Obviously, it's rolled in crit hit damage and headshot damage. Now, the thing I want to note about this, you could use this one, or you could use the Grupo Sombra for the 15% crit hit damage, and a lot of people probably choose that one. But I want to let you guys know, the crit hit chance on the brand set is a lot more powerful than a crit hit chance on the attribute roll. What I mean by this is that when you have crit hit chance on a brand set, it is 10 versus 15. So that means basically it's a 2 to 3 ratio. But when it's on the attributes, it's 6% versus 12%, which is a 1 to 2 ratio. Obviously, you want to get, the most beneficial ratio, which is basically means that you want to have as much crit hit chance on your brand sets as possible while having as much crit hit damage on your attributes as possible. That's basically the easiest way to think about it. And this same principle actually applies to all of your weapon mods. When you look at 5% crit chance or 5% crit damage, you generally want to choose the 5% crit chance unless you really don't have any other options and you're already at the cap, which you might want to actually just try to adjust some other things in your build just so you can get that crit chance on your weapon, because it is much more beneficial to have it in the 1-to-1 ratio, because you want to have the crit damage in those key areas where you can get the most effectiveness out of them, and you want to have your crit chance on the most effective areas where you can get the best use out of them. So the easiest thing to remember is you want to prioritize getting your crit chance on your weapon and on your brand sets as much as possible. And again, just any sort of little buff that you might be able to actually get from talents or whatever. Crit chance is definitely the most beneficial there. But when you're looking at the attributes, the crit damage is generally the higher of the two values, and you want to get as much crit damage there as possible. So, if that means you just need to get more headshot damage instead of crit chance on your attributes, do that. If you've already got 60% crit chance, using those extra rolls for headshot damage or whatever can be really beneficial to you. Now, the thing I want to note about this build, I said, grinding for it was rather difficult, and it still is. I haven't gotten all the pieces that I want. Obviously, you can see the talents, for a PvP damage type build, these talents might not be the best. Now, obviously, they do have some benefits. They're not terrible. Otherwise, I wouldn't be using them. But there are better options out there, especially for a build like this. You can see that I'm basically trying to max out my crit chance, crit damage, headshot damage on all my attributes. With my core attribute, I am trying to use a little bit of skill tier. So that means I need to get those perfect rolls in the attribute rolls. But this ends up creating a lot of RNG on the chest and the backpack to try to get everything perfect so that you could actually roll for skill tier over the weapon damage. But unless you get a perfect roll already, you don't necessarily want to try to farm this way. What you would want to do ideally is try to get that skill tier on a holster or a knee pad or the gloves, just so that you don't have to worry about getting the perfect talent there as well. So basically all you have to worry about is just getting a crit chance, crit damage, or headshot roll on there, and then you can just roll off your core attribute, your weapon damage for the skill tier, and that'll give you that'll make it a lot easier for you. If you try to go with the actual chest or the backpack, you're gonna have to worry about that talent too. So now you're gonna have to get crit chance, crit damage, or headshot damage, and the talent so that you can roll off the weapon damage, which makes it rather difficult. Now, the reason that I'm using the Providence Defense, okay, I get the headshot damage, I get the crit chance, I get the crit damage. Pretty simple. I've got, the 20% for the weapon damage. Again, pretty simple. The Coyote mask, again, provides that 25% crit hit damage when I'm basically within range of my optimal pistol damage. So that, again, makes sense over the Grupo Sombra 15% brand set bonus. So I do get a little bit, better bonus there. Plus, my team members are also getting that crit bonus from my mask too. So again, that adds in even more benefit over the Grupo Sombra brand set bonus. Now, you could use a Grupo Sombra if you didn't want to use a Cheska Faroba. It's not really too big of an issue. It's not optimal, but it's not a huge hindrance to you. And of course, I don't want to miss out on the more obvious choice, which is the Motherly Love Alps gloves. Now, I know it's not exactly the greatest for the damage build, but that 20% shield health, or I guess 20% health in general, could be really beneficial to the build. Plus, I've also been considering that this build might be pretty good with just having 3 and 3 instead of 4 and 2. But another skill tier would end up giving me almost 2 million more health on my shield, which would just make it a little bit more effective in PvP. So I'm not stressing that damage alone makes this the best build. You need to have a balance with how much health you have on your shield versus how much damage you're actually outputting. Because as of right now, your shield health does not give you very many options. If you make a small mistake, your shield will die before you can take out the enemy, and then you are open for, basically just being destroyed. Alright guys, that'll do it for me. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.